All right, so I've started YouTube and I've started Twitch. Let's see if they go live. All right, I see us on YouTube. Let's see if I see us on. Hey, I see us on Twitch too. Okay. We are live.
Alrighty.
All right.
I'm just bringing up the chat before we get started.
Sure.
Oh no, I gotta mute that. I can hear myself.
At least I can't hear ourselves. That would be bad. Then it would be eating right back into the.
Alrighty. There is no Dana. Only, today on. Hello and good week to everybody. That's a normal phrasing for sure. It is just the two of us this week, myself and Sinistar here. How you doing, sir?
I am doing well. I'm glad it's Friday.
That's a good thing to be glad about.
Yeah. How about you?
I am glad I'm done with Minish Cap. Did actually finish it so that nobody could tell me I had to finish it to understand if it was good or not. Because I've heard that argument before.
Well, isn't this the one in, I don't remember if it was us discussing it or if it was in the Discord in one of the channels where you said, I finished it, and if there's more past the credits, I'm going to miss it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I finished it, and then there was more, and I was like, nope, there's more. And there was one more fight. And then after then I got credits, and I was like, if there's more, I'm done. But there was not. It saved the file after that and let me go back and do things. But yeah, I wasn't doing that. Anyway,
Nice.
Moving on. This week, we are talking about a platform game that I was actually personally not very familiar with before we did this. From when did this come out?
92, I think.
92.
Was it? Let's see. I've got my mind palace up here. Let's see. It was 92. 92 was the original release.
All right. This came out originally for the Amiga. We're talking about Zool, Zool.
That's right.
Now, I do remember this game to a degree because when it came out, this is one of those stories about my uncle. This was one of those games that he was super jazzed about because he had an Amiga, and he always would talk about for like a couple of months. This was his game that he would just mention every time I saw him. And I don't know, I just never bothered to rent it for the Genesis or the Super Nintendo, and I think both were available at my local rental shop.
I was going to say, did you see this in your rental shop?
Yes.
Okay. Because I don't know that I ever did. But once again, I'm not, I wasn't a console kid. Although I came into consoles for Super NES, and I don't remember this game. I came about this game later when I was looking up, the Amiga, top whatever, right? So.
Yeah, I remember seeing the magazine ads for this. I remember seeing the box on the shelf. Just never was something that I was like, yeah, I got to play that. And I don't know if it was just something about it that didn't pull me in or what. It seemed maybe to me, a little generic. Like, since it was designed to compete with Mario and Sonic and the like. And, I already had my generic. I had Aero the Acrobat on Super Nintendo. I didn't need more generic platformer.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Well, it's funny that you bring up, whether this was supposed to be a competition for, or not be a competition, but be competition for Sonic or Mario, or I mean, this was trying to create a franchise character, but when I looked this up, when I looked up the information on this, there is a promo picture on Moby Games of a magazine ad that says, let's see here. What does it say? It says, "Bad news for hedgehogs." So, I mean, I think that was the target, right? Was Sonic in
Yeah. I mean,
particular.
the game moves very fast, so I understand that. It is wild to me that I want to say this game was initially developed by one guy and the art was done by one more person.
Really?
I think that's what I read.
Okay.
I could be wrong. It was around that time, so I'm sure it was a pretty small team, just the same.
It is
But
4 people that have credits,
it's
by the way.
4 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, whether or not, I mean, the code was one person was code. So, and then
Who was that? Was that Gary Allen?
George Allen. George Allen is what
George
it
Allen.
says. Yeah.
Okay. So I remembered his last name and the first letter
Right.
of his first name.
Right. Yeah, and then you have somebody that did graphics. I mean, that makes sense. Somebody that did maps, and then somebody that did music. There was no like multiple people on any of these. It was one person to one task.
So it was like code, level design, music, art.
Exactly.
Simple as that.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah. So,
well, whoever was on music absolutely nailed it.
Oh yeah.
The music in this game is spectacular. Like, it's the standout to me.
Yes. Now this is something since you opened this door, this was a anomaly really toward the Amiga more than any other, where there was no multiple channel, or I guess there were multiple channels, but basically the way that they worked is a lot of these games you got either music or you got sound effects, and this was one of those games. And where it gets even worse is there was the initial release, there was no design music per level. You went into the options, you selected that you wanted music instead of sound effects, and you selected the music that you played the entire time through. You picked one track.
Oh man.
That's said,
rough.
The tracks were fantastic, but you picked one.
I'm trying to see what else this guy maybe did that I'm familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like he did a lot of stuff that was originally designed for Amiga. Oh, he did Top Gear 2. Okay, Top Gear 2 had good music.
Yeah.
Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare. I think that was the Dreamcast one.
Okay.
All right.
So he has some chops. He has some chops to call forth.
Yeah. Hey, I've played a few of these games and remember some of their music. So
okay. Pat Phelan or Felon. I'm Phelan. We're going with Phelan.
Phelan, I think. I think it's Phelan.
I about called him Felon.
But yeah, the main theme is absolutely a banger in this game.
Yes.
And that is across pretty much, like, I tried. So you gifted me a copy of Redimensioned.
Correct.
Which is on Steam. So I played that one. I played it on Game Boy, Genesis, Super Nintendo, and Master System. And that main theme is in all 5 of them. And it's in all renditions. It doesn't sound exactly the same, obviously, but right. I mean, even sometimes the pacing of the song is different. But it's a banger in every one. Like, even on the Game Boy, it sounds rad.
That's awesome. You brought up the Game Boy. I watched a play video of the Game Boy version, and it loses so much of the speed.
It does, which I'm not opposed to.
Right.
I don't hate the speed in this game, but it can be frustrating. And after playing for a while, I figured out why the speed is frustrating.
I think I have the
Now,
same idea, but go ahead.
okay, so this is a game. Think a game that does move as fast as Sonic moves, like at his fastest, but like all the time.
Right.
There's almost no ramp up for speed.
Right.
Sonic's got a 0 to 60 of like 3 seconds.
Right.
Zool has a 0 to 60 of like 3/4 of a second.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And so you start a little bit and then it's instantly vroom.
Uh-huh.
And the problem is the camera does not keep Zool in the center. He runs in the direction on the screen that you're going.
Mhm.
So you lose some of that peripheral vision that you
Right.
kind of need. And yeah,
Right.
I know the Sonic games do that too, but when they do it, it's generally you're going so fast. It's a spot that's designed to be fast and not screw you over. Whereas
That's
this entire game is designed to screw you over, I
right.
will say.
That's my complaint is you get Sonic speed. As you mentioned, you get Sonic speed at speed, right? There's so little ramp
Yeah.
up. And then this game is like the worst of blind jumps at Sonic speed.
Oh,
At Sonic speed.
yeah. I had that problem a lot. I want to say in the Genesis one. It was just blind jump after blind jump.
Mhm.
You have to make a leap of faith multiple times in a row at some points
Uh-huh.
where you're just like, I hope this is how fast I need to be going and where I need to end up.
Right.
And sometimes it's a leap of faith because you can't see what's below you,
Right.
which is sometimes spikes.
Yes.
And you don't know if they're going to be, you don't know if you need to go fast enough to clear the spike pit
Uh-huh.
or slow enough to not fall in the spike pit.
Right.
And so you don't know that. Otherwise, it's leap of faith jumps of just off screen jump
Mhm.
and land on a platform. And a lot of times, the first try, you might miss it and fall. And then you'll be like, all right, well, I guess I have to go back all the way around and try again.
Now there
With a
are
game that's on a timer.
yes, but there are checkpoints. So
Yeah. I did
Uh,
figure that out. They're activated differently in some of the versions for
yes.
some reason. Like,
Yeah.
I want to say the Genesis and Super Nintendo are pretty forgiving, where you run up, just shoot a bullet through it or touch it, and it
Right.
flips, and now
Right.
you've got the checkpoint. I did learn that the Game Boy one has the checkpoints. So here's an interesting thing. The first way I tried this game was on the Game Boy.
Nice.
That was the first one I fired up. Like, okay, let's set the bar low because I'm gonna start with the Game Boy version of a multi-platform ported game.
Right.
And I didn't realize a lot of the mechanics. So I wasn't having a bad time, but I kept coming up short on trying to get to the end of the stage. So finally, after, I don't know, 4 or 5 lives, I was like, all right, I have a feel for this. Let me switch platforms.
Okay.
I did switch platforms. I think that's when I tried Redimensioned.
Oh.
So like I went from
okay.
Game Boy to like the modern
Yes.
accessible one.
Right.
And it was hugely different.
Uh-huh.
And I actually liked the new take on it that's got the double jump and all that.
Mhm.
And we'll come back to that in a bit, but it's a lot more accessible and player friendly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I started jumping into the other ones, Super Nintendo, Genesis,
Sure.
and Master System, and they all have their pros and cons. Weirdly, I hate the Super Nintendo version. Not for any other reason. Well, the Genesis has this issue a little bit, but not as bad as Super Nintendo. But it's so damn busy to look at.
Oh, okay.
It is a visual assault on your senses. You can't tell what's an enemy, what's foreground, what's background. There's just so much happening. And it's all very similar color palettes.
Okay. Okay.
And so I was struggling to like spot an enemy in the mess of like little things that are in the foreground and background, and then the background is highly detailed, and it's just all the same color palettes. So everything's just moving.
Right.
And I'm like, God, I hope I don't die.
All right. All right. So I played mostly the Amiga version, which of course is the original. And to give
Mhm.
a little background to our listeners on why we decided to talk Zool. We when we started coming up with ideas for this week's episode, it kind of was like, should we give the Amiga a little love? And we started talking about multiple Amiga titles, and then we ended up starting to talk about, platformers, and then we brought up Zool. So I have to, I don't know, confess a little bit. I don't like Amiga platformers. And there's a very distinct reason why. And that is,
Oh,
it's a one button system, right? At
Mm.
least for a long time, it was a one button system. And Zool and, what's the other one? Turrican. They both use the mechanism of pressing up to jump.
yeah.
And it feels just I remember playing games back in the day where it was press up to jump, and at that point in time, my brain would grok this and just do it. But the problem is in modern day, I go back and play those
Yeah.
games, and it feels so wrong to like smash up while trying to smash over, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely get that.
yeah. So
Um,
and then of course the Amiga version did not have any of the creature comforts that came with the later versions, including double jump, or in some editions you could actually climb the walls. You would grapple the wall,
Yeah, on Master
Yeah.
System,
and then
interestingly enough.
you can move up and down the walls. No, on the Amiga, you grasp it, and then you have to jump off and, twist yourself back to grab again and again. And you're doing this by mashing up and left or right. And it just feels it feels wrong, and, and so like visually the game on the Amiga is fantastic. I mentioned the struggles with having either the sound effects or the music. The music on the Amiga is still fantastic, but you lose the sound effects. But honestly, that interface of one button, and that one button is your shoot or punch, right? I mean, or if you're jumping in the air and you press the button, you do your little spin attack, which I actually like the spin attack. I do like that feature.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do really enjoy that. Is it gonna be weird? I'm gonna go ahead and state my favorite of the versions I played,
Okay.
Game Boy.
Oh, really?
After going and playing all the other ones and getting a really strong feel of the mechanics, I went back to the Game Boy one. And because it can't be super busy, I can see what's happening. And the spin jump mechanic is there. It's a little awkward because you have to like hold up while you hit the attack button while in the air.
Oh.
And that's what makes them spin. Because it's only got the two buttons, jump and attack.
Mhm.
So attack by itself is shoot.
Okay.
But if you're in the air and you hold and you hit attack and up, he'll spin.
Gotcha.
And so between all that, I found the Game Boy to be my favorite version in playability. Between the old 4 console ports. Of course.
I was gonna say, are you including the remaster,
No,
which is called Redimensioned?
Redimensioned. I guess we'll touch on that now. Was actually very enjoyable. I really liked how it played.
Yes.
The double jump made the platforming not so painful because if you messed up something, you could sort of recorrect a little bit. And then, of course, it's zoomed out.
Right.
Because that was a huge issue, at least for the Super Nintendo and Genesis versions, is that the character sprite is so big. And all the sprites are really big for what it is. And I know back then, big sprites, really pretty, selling point,
Yeah.
I think Rayman had a similar thing going on.
Right.
But it was a much slower game.
And Earthworm Jim. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But those didn't go 95 miles per hour after a second.
Right. Yeah, Earthworm Jim was very much about pull your head off and swing, right? I mean,
Yeah. Like that was platforming challenges, not blind faith platforming
Right.
challenges at supersonic speeds.
Right. Right.
So I appreciate what Redimension did, and it made a game that was almost there really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Like
mean,
that's my issue with going back and playing the old Zools
mhm,
is that it's almost there.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, since we're touching on the remaster, the redimensioned as it's called, um, honestly, there are so many times that you get a remaster that you're like, okay, it's a bucket of paint on the same game, but it has all the warts of the original game, right? And I feel like with the redimensioned, they they paid homage to the game as it needed to be paid homage to, but they gave you all the creature comforts that makes it very playable, very playable.
Yeah.
Like even though you move forward on the screen a little bit as you get to speed, because it's backed out, you get so much more landscape that you still have that time to react. You know, so really quick, if you're okay, I want to talk about how they did the manual for this game.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah. So the manual for this game, this was actually one of the highlights. I looked at a YouTube video where they talked about this game, and they talked about how, the manual was kind of this really interesting take. And I know that a number of games did this, like the Adventure Quest games on the Atari did this as well, where they gave you a comic book, but the comic book was built into the manual. And it's this, you should go look it up. You can find it on a number of this, the history websites, but it's Zool, the main character, as an old man, and he has his walking stick, and he's sitting in his big recliner, and he's got this old man beard, and he's telling his grandkids or his kids a story. He's like, let me tell you how this happened. And the whole premise is he's a space ninja. And it starts out, there I was on my way home after some heavy duty ninjaing. Like,
wow.
How do you get past, I mean, that's just, yeah. So he gets sucked into this like dimension, which is where the whole thing comes out. And he's talking to his computer to see if he could figure out where he is. And then the computer's giving him some information, and it makes these blurp, whoop, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, Zool, you have been brought to this land as a challenge. And it's this big, like, you have to prove yourself as an intergalactic ninja. But it's never signed. Like, it's never signed by anybody. So, like, I read this and I'm like, if this had been Mario, it would have been signed Bowser. If this had been, any of the other, Dr. Eggman or somebody, right? I mean, but this never gives you any of that. And then the ship is like, I'm going to explode, so I'm shutting down. And the last couple frames is Zool breaking through the wall of the ship and leaving the Zool-shaped hole in the ship. And then the exploding ship behind him. And that's the whole thing. That's how it describes. And then it just gives you like, all of the information beyond that. But, and then also something very interesting. Apparently the development team was running out of money, and they ended up getting a, sponsorship from, what's the brand? Chupa Chups?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Chupa Chups.
The candy company, Chupa Chups.
The suckers.
Uh-huh. And so you like, this is part of that busy background. When you started talking about the busy background, I pictured the candy levels that are just chock full of colorful candy and Chupa Chup logos everywhere. So, yeah, very interesting kind of premise. And then this also was one of those games that had the copy protection that was the the spinning wheel that you had to line up multiple things.
Mm.
And apparently it was horribly printed, so like the numbers and
Oh
stuff would be like
no,
offset and like, yeah. So
that sucks.
yeah. Anyway, so very interesting manual, very interesting game. This, it came out on the Amiga first. Came out on the Amiga before they did the Advanced Graphics Edition, or AGA, and then they did do a re-release for the AGA as well, which introduced an intro movie on the AGA version. So, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Is that what the 3D rendering of him is from?
Uh-huh. Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh. So, but yeah, I mean, the Amiga did get a lot of good games, and honestly, during the day, I'm sure for everybody that was used to pressing up to jump, this was a fantastic game.
Oh yeah, like I said, my uncle swore up and down by his Amiga. He subscribed to the Amiga magazines, which I still have a couple of, I think. He was constantly like he'd be like, "Dude, you got to try this game." And it would be a game that would come out like a while later. Like I think Chuck Rock did it as well. It came out for the
Okay.
Amiga first or something and then
Uh-huh.
consoles. And so he told me about Chuck Rock and then later it came out and on other things and I was able to try it. I was like,
Nice.
not for me, but I see why he was also, I should specify, um, he was a graphic artist.
Okay.
So he also like he used to do comic books when he was younger, things like that. So
Okay.
it was really up his alley when it crossed over between like something that was artistically new in video games as well as a video game.
Right.
So
Right.
he liked video games, he liked art. So when it combined the two, this is why he was into Out of This World. It was
Oh,
something new for
yeah.
video games. So whenever there was something artistically new that played decent, he was all over it. And so I think that must be why he was into this one.
Okay. Yeah, graphically it's a fantastic looking game. As you mentioned though, it is busy.
It's very busy.
Yeah.
Sometimes what they did not think of is sometimes less is more.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so I do think I found it interesting that Redimensioned is based on the Genesis version.
Okay.
And so it's the Genesis version's levels, which every version seems to have different levels, which is odd.
Yeah.
Like some similar sensibilities in the level designs, but they're different levels.
Right. Okay.
And it seems like it toned down the background because the background in Redimensioned doesn't distract me from the game. Like it doesn't hide the elements. Like sometimes on the Genesis and Super Nintendo, I don't notice the spikes because they're white. The background has white.
Right.
They're on white flooring. It gets lost.
I had the same
And
issue with the Amiga version. I can't tell you how many times I would run into a pit of spikes and be like, "Oh, those are spikes." Like after I was already into them.
And it's not even a pit of spikes. It'll just be spikes on the ground
Yeah.
that you can just physically run into. And unlike Sonic the Hedgehog, where if you run into spikes from the side, they don't hurt you because they're not stabbing you there. In Zool, they do hurt you if you touch them on the side.
Right.
So I that was frustrating to me. I get it. It's not a huge issue. It's this tile bad. I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely Game Boy and Master System are my preferred versions other than Redimensioned because they have a solid color background. Like it doesn't hinder your gameplay.
Right.
And honestly, the Master System I think had a smaller sprite and so it gave you more room to see what was going on.
Okay.
Let me make sure I'm not talking out of my ass on that one. Yeah, the sprite is a bit smaller, and I think it was better at keeping him in the middle of the screen.
Okay. So we saw some improvements port to port, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is really weird to me that the Master System one is the one that nailed the camera.
right? Especially for being a
Uh,
system that didn't really have a huge release in North America.
yeah, in fact, I don't think the game got a North American release on Master System. I want to say it
Okay.
was Europe. Let me
Let's see.
see.
Yeah, I've got it right here. So Master System, you probably are going to get to it faster. United Kingdom only for Master System.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
just the UK,
Yeah.
which seems like a small market for 1992,
Right.
93.
Right.
But I mean, it's a superior port.
Okay.
Especially with the climbing, that sort of eases some of the issues with the jumps.
Right.
Because Zool does have the Ninja Gaiden sticky jump a little bit.
A little, when you say a little bit on the Amiga, it is aggressively Ninja Gaiden wall grabs. It is aggressively
Ah,
that.
okay.
And then, of course, they have, they'll have wall to wall where you're supposed to jump, back and forth, but there will be spikes on the other ones, on the other side.
Yeah.
And the problem is you don't have the ability to move up and down. So your only recourse is if you're too close and you're going to jump into those spikes, your only recourse is actually to jump down and then move your way back up.
Ah.
Yeah. And of course, you're not using a jump button once again. I mean, I guess technically up is a button, but you're using
Yeah.
your D-pad or your joystick up.
And I can't overstate this. It's not a bad game.
No, this game
It's
is
just it's almost there, right?
Yeah.
It was almost a really good game.
Yes. And as you mentioned, if I would highly recommend, it's $10 without being discounted. I would highly recommend the Redimension version. I only played the Redimension version for like 20 minutes and immediately I was like, oh, this is so much better of a game.
Yeah, and I did go and try the hardcore mode that plays more like the original, but it's still zoomed out.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating again. So not as frustrating because things are still a little bit more visible, but yeah,
Gotcha.
it's still a bit frustrating.
Right.
So again, it's a mechanics issue. The mechanics were so close.
Yeah.
So close to being what would be considered a classic instead of, something that sort of just faded into the background as time went on, which is unfortunate because as a game that was designed by 4 people,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, like that's a strong, and I don't know if you checked it out, but I checked out George Allen's previous game.
No.
Switchblade 2 was his
Okay.
direct, like the game he did just before this one.
Okay.
And that one was criticized apparently for not having enough enemies. And I don't know if that means like numerically
Uh-huh.
or like I don't know if that means quantity of enemies, just placement, or enemy types. I don't know
Okay.
what it meant when it was stated.
Okay.
But I did play a couple levels, and Zool is an enormous improvement.
Okay. Okay.
It's ridiculous.
Huh. Now, that game that he did before this one, Switchblade, what did you say it was? Switchblade something.
Switchblade 2.
Switchblade 2. Was that released on the Amiga first, or was that on a different system?
I think that was Amiga. And later it was ported to the Atari Lynx, which is the version I played. So
Okay. Yeah,
it
looking
might
at
have
it.
been a little simplified. I know the resolution is lower than on Amiga.
Yeah.
And so I'm not judging the art of the game, but just mechanically, structurally, design wise, it was kind of boring.
Okay.
And even on the Lynx, it's just sound effects.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, it looks like it was released on the Amiga and the Atari ST in the same year. I don't have a date because this was before they really started tracking dates, specifically.
Yeah.
But
Also, games didn't really have street dates back then. It was just
yeah,
shipped out, and when they got it, they sold it.
right.
So,
So likely Amiga first, especially since Zool was Amiga first. So okay, I may have to try Switchblade 2. I may have to pull it up on the Amiga core on the Mister.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know how it looks and sounds and plays on that, because again, it was one of those games that it structurally it has a lot going for it, and it just narrowly misses the mark and becomes something mediocre instead of something good.
Okay. You know,
Um,
looking at George Allen, he looks like he is still in the game industry.
oh yeah,
Yeah, he apparently was real-time supervision of production for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League on the PS5.
oh,
Yeah. So
interesting.
apparently he was part of the testing and feedback for the Redimension Zool. Makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it's cool to see somebody from that era still in the industry.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty darn cool.
yeah.
Oh, I do want to point out the Game Boy version actually gives you a sound option
Oh
where
really?
it's music, sound, or both.
So they pay homage to like
Yeah. And one of the times I played it, I think I accidentally chose just music because I was like, "Where's the sound effects?"
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
But yeah, it's pretty cool that they did that. I thought that was interesting.
Nice. All right. Well, I want to bring up one other little trivia thing, which can also spin us into talking about the character themselves.
Yeah.
Apparently, a lot of reviewers referred to Zool as an ant, and it makes sense. When you look at him, he looks very ant-like, but Gremlin...
I think I used to think that too.
Okay. Yeah, Gremlin actually issued a press release saying that, well, a press release claiming to be from the leader of a body representing ants, complaining about the misrepresentation of hardworking ants and, and them as a species.
That's funny.
Yeah. So obviously not an ant, but that also kind of the reason I wanted to bring that up is there is a sequel, and I didn't get to it, but you said you did. So do you want to talk a little bit about the sequel?
I watched some Let's Play of the sequel because that one was strictly Amiga, and I don't have an easy way to play Amiga at the moment. So I figured I'd check out the gameplay, and I think I skipped through. I checked out what each stage was. I watched a Let's Play of the person pick zoos instead of Zool. So with Zool 2, as we discovered a little bit before the episode started, it stars 3 characters: Zool, his female companion Zoos, and their 2-headed dog Zoon. Now, I was watching when watching the gameplay, there's bonus stages after each boss that are kind of like breakout or something like that.
Oh, really?
So you're moving something back and forth, knocking balls up and hitting all the bricks and collecting the things that fall down.
That's
so
cool.
You're getting points, you're getting 1-ups, you're getting things that affect the bonus game's gameplay. You might get more balls or slow them down or whatever. But this little thing, and it looked like 2 little Zools or something, just moving back and forth. And every once in a while you'd hear, and I was like, what is happening? Well, when we found out that that was their 2-headed dog Zoon, it all clicked.
That's fantastic.
I was like, I don't understand why I keep hearing why this thing just has 2 little Zool heads moving back and forth like they were carrying a platform or something. I didn't know. Apparently, it's a 2-headed dog.
That was it growling. That's awesome.
Yeah. But it's like the lamest sound effect. They didn't even try.
All right, I'm gonna have to go back. I'm gonna have to go watch or play this. Yeah. I mean, so you mentioned I gotta wonder if that was kind of a direct reference to Sonic's bonus stages, right? Which play entirely differently from Sonic the game. And I wonder if they looked at that and said,
maybe.
Okay, why don't we put in a breakout type game instead of a weird, move around the stage, you know.
Yeah, like Sonic 1 was very sort of like spinning pachinko.
Uh-huh.
Sonic 2 was the half pipe.
Yeah.
Sonic 3 had all sorts of them. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I think Zool 2 came out after Sonic 3. And
Okay.
since Sonic 3 had like what, it had the sphere game, it had
Uh-huh.
the giant, I want to say sort of reverse pachinko, and then it had other stuff too. I can't think of it right now, but
Yeah. So I wonder if that was kind of a response to, because I mean, obviously they were taking on from that promo, they were very specifically taking on Sonic the Hedgehog.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And I will say that Zool 2 seems like it got more stuff right.
okay.
I do think Zool 2 gameplay actually kept the character in the center. The backgrounds were not as busy or
Mm.
distracting.
They didn't have to
Um,
have Chupa Chups do a sponsorship.
yeah, but like it seems like they got a lot more right in the second one. And Jake pointed out that for some weird reason, um, Zoos, like they're both ninjas, but
Mhm.
Zoos looks like she's wearing red leather and she uses a whip,
Yes. Uh-huh.
which that's a choice.
You know, at this point
Like, were they going for Electra?
they were going for the 16-year-old crowd,
I mean, maybe,
you know?
but I want to say around this time, for whatever reason, I was given a pack of collectible cards from somewhere.
Okay.
And one of them wound up being like Electra, like they were just comic book collectible cards. So maybe that was something that was
Oh, yeah.
like new on the market. And so with that, I don't know,
Huh.
but it gives Electra vibes now. I think back to that age.
Okay. Okay. So the timing, I mean, honestly, it feels like
And
they really borrowed a lot from other games to put a game together. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
yeah,
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Um, I think it really was kind of an aspect of, okay, let's essentially build a game like these other games, but let's create our own character.
yeah. You
So,
know what? Batman Returns came out in '92 as well. It's also
okay.
Catwoman, leather and a whip.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah.
I think it was just part of the cultural zeitgeist at the time.
Yeah.
The badass woman ninja with a whip.
Hey, hell yeah. Yeah. So,
But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think she's got kind of a mohawk with a ponytail.
yeah, the art is almost a little hard to tell. I mean, it's cuz it's that kind of ant-looking head,
Yeah.
but definitely a ponytail. So,
Yeah, I think yeah, she looks like she's just got the eye mask, no head mask like Zool.
okay.
So she's got sort of like the mohawk strip.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Not necessarily a mohawk, but it's like it looks like it's just cleaned off on the sides
Yeah.
and just the long hair all the way back, which is it
I,
also seems very punkish for the time.
well, I was going to say that's a popular look today. You see a
Yeah.
lot, yeah. So,
So it's ahead of its time, maybe.
there you go. There you go. Well,
But
uh,
I did watch Zelda 2, Zool 2.
uh-huh.
In that one, apparently the enemy, like it's the same boss on every. I don't want to mislead. It's not the same boss, but the boss is the same entity.
Okay.
And like it takes a different shape. So on the first boss, it's a block.
Hmm.
The next time you fight it, I think it's an orb bouncing around. One of the times
Okay.
you fight it, it's a light bulb. It's different things, but it usually like in most of its forms because you fight it like 6 times. It's some sort of block or square. And apparently, his name is Mental Block.
Ha! Well, I mean, okay, this checks out, right? Because Bowser it was always either Bowser or Bowser's kids or Bowser's whatever. Like the enemies at the end of Mario stages are really kind of all the same as well.
Yeah.
Dr. Eggman, right? I mean, like,
Yeah, it's Robotnik with different robots or different machinery, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this checks out. Like,
yeah.
I really do feel like they basically were like, let's create a character, but then let's take a lot of ideas from other games before instead of making our own, right? So
yeah, and in all fairness, that's how we've gotten some of our best games is you borrow ideas from other games, which is one of the reasons that a lot of people, including myself, aren't big fans of software copyright?
Yeah.
What is it? How is it coding copyright? I don't know what the term is, but
yeah. Well, intellectual property, right?
No. Like to copyright a mechanic.
Oh, trademark.
I can't think of what that's called, or maybe trademark. I don't remember.
Patent.
But like yeah, it's like a mechanic patent or something. But like Namco did it in the '90s with mini games during loading screens, so nobody else could do that.
Right.
That sort of thing.
Likely a patent then.
Yeah, it's some sort. I think software patent might just be what it's called.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Like Nintendo tried to do it with Tears of the Kingdom's building and what do you call it? The physics that applied to it.
Gotcha.
And I was like, that's not new to Zelda. Like Zelda's not the first game to ever do that. What are they doing?
Right. Right. Sinstress brings up the sanity meter from Eternal Darkness. That was actually pretty revolutionary for Eternal Darkness. I remember that for sure. I don't know if you ever played Eternal Darkness, but
yeah,
I loved the sanity meter.
I've played some and I watched a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I think because I watched my stepbrother play it, and I think that green volume bar in that one actually was exactly the same as our TV's green volume bar. So it was like really messing with him.
Oh, I know we're off on a tangent, but the one that got me the most was a crash screen.
The reset?
And then deleting your save games.
Oh.
After the crash game, it said like, save games deleted or whatever. And like you went in to like reload and there was nothing there.
Oh, no.
Well, and then it let you sit there for like 6 or 7 seconds and then and you're back to the game. Like, but still, like that one was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, Eternal Darkness did one of the coolest, like some of the coolest stuff in trolling the player without actually messing with their gameplay. It was great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm with you. I think that, I mean, honestly, first off, we're at a point where new is really hard to come up with, right? I mean, almost, I'm not going to say everything's already been done, but so much. It's like music, right? Every note has been played. It's just what the order is and maybe what synthesis you put on it or whatever, right? But like every note's been played, right? And so I'm not going to say we've tapped the entirety of what could be done in a video game, but I think so much of it has already been there that we are just borrowing from previous, intellectual property.
Yeah. At this point, it's taking ideas and perfecting them rather than coming up with new ideas, at least most of the time.
Right.
Like every once in a while, you get a Balatro.
Yes. Oh, news. I don't know if you saw this. Sorry. Let's have a quick news. Let's have a quick news moment for the podcast. The creator of Balatro has guaranteed that it will never be sold to any sort of gambling firm ever. He wrote this into his will.
Yeah, even like posthumously, it cannot ever be sold to a gambling company at all, which is awesome.
Yeah, because he's like, I mean, it's not a gambling game. The only thing that it borrows from gambling is poker mechanics. It's not even poker game. It's poker mechanics. So I know we already did an episode, but play Balatro if you haven't.
Go check that one out. If you missed it, go play Balatro. I
Yeah.
think it should be hitting phones not too long from now too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If it hasn't already.
Yeah.
He's definitely stated it's gonna be, which is gonna be bad for everybody.
Meetings are going to become hell at work.
And I think it's also got a big update coming out next year, which
Yeah. I think DLC,
So-
the first DLC, right?
oh, is that what it is? Gonna
I
be DLC?
think so, and I think it's free DLC if I remember right.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's just a patch.
I know, but
That's
you know.
that's a big update. That's the I don't call that DLC.
Okay, but in the definition of DLC, it is
Yeah,
downloadable
it is
and it is
content that you
content.
download.
But yeah, it's
But
not
DLC tends to imply you pay for it.
Sure,
but
sure.
In this case, no.
Well, I mean,
But
yeah.
anyway,
How much of No Man's Sky is DLC and how much is the actual game, right?
yeah, it's like 90% DLC at this point.
Right?
If you want to go that route.
Yeah. Anyway,
Zool, definitely
Yeah.
give it a shot. I recommend Game Boy or Master System personally. At
and
least if you're looking at the old ones.
yeah, and definitely check out for $10. Honestly, this game on the redimensioned, remastered, whatever they call it, redimensioned, but it is not just a slap of paint on top of the original. It is creature comforts that brings it to essentially what would be a modern platformer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do believe what Redimension did to it would have made it an actual contender against some of the other major platformers of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, if it had played
And-
that way, we might have had
and-
Sonic and Mario and Zool, right?
Yeah, I can even get behind how zoomed in it was if Zool just stayed in the center of the camera at all times.
But yeah, the redimensioned, but I mean, I fully support, learning where history comes from. So yeah, check them
Oh
all out.
yeah. Like it was definitely cool to look into this. As I said, I do have a story kind of tied to it a little bit.
Mhm.
And I do remember seeing it on the shelves back then. This wasn't one that just completely skipped over my head. It was just one I never bothered. Like I'd pick up and put it back down.
Right. Yeah.
I looked at it at the rental store and never actually rented it.
Well,
But
Yeah.
with that, is there anything else you want to say about Zool?
no, I thought it was a good pick for the week for sure.
Yeah, next up we'll have to check out Vin's Clortho.
Yes. I saw. I was hoping for those listening to the
Granted, that's
podcast.
been there for like a month and a half, but
Right. But for those listening to
haven't
the
mixed these up too
podcast,
much.
he pointed to his vinyl sleeve for the Ghostbusters soundtrack. So,
Anyway, before we close this out, is there anything you've got going on? Anything you've been playing you want to talk about?
I've gotten back into the truck simulators, and I highly recommend them. I've been playing American Truck Simulator lately, and it's chill. But I'm going to argue. We had this discussion in Press B to Cancel. On our Discord. But go to pressbtocancel.com to find out and come join our Discord. But I had this argument. It's an RPG. Come fight me. How about you?
That's pretty cool. I have played some, I want to say some Euro Truck and some American Truck Simulator.
Yeah.
Because I have both of those, I think.
Okay.
And
Nice.
it is fun, but I'm terrible at backing up the trailers in those games.
To give you a little I guess
Do you
Sinistar
just
spoiler.
use the auto park?
I use the middle entry, which generally I can just drive forward into. Yeah. When you park, there's either auto park, there's one that's like a halfway point where basically it kind of gives you a point on the map to just drive your truck essentially and place it on. Or there's the hardest option, which is backing it up to the actual bay, the loading bay.
I don't think that was available in Euro Truck Simulator.
Okay.
The pulling in.
All
It was
right.
either back it in or auto park.
Nice. Well, the
But
American version, you get the middle one, and you get about half the experience for that one.
and as I was telling you before the episode started, I started Outer Wilds this week. And that is a really cool little puzzle game that's just about exploring your solar system and figuring out what's going on and trying to stop it from happening. Because I don't think it's a huge spoiler to say this, about every 30 minutes of gameplay, the solar system resets and you're caught in a time loop. It's a little Groundhog Day.
I'm glad you brought that up when we started talking before the episode, because as I mentioned to you, when I saw the Steam page for this, I was like, oh, it's just another No Man's Sky. Why would I want to pick it up? And so I'm glad you mentioned that it's not. It's very much not.
Yeah, think exploring a small solar system for Myst or something along those lines. It's very much, come across the puzzle, solve the mystery, but it's like free roaming. You can just go to whatever planet you see in space, explore the planet you start on, just do whatever. I think I crashed into a moon really fast at one point and had to go out and fix my ship. I just sort of bounced off of it, which was weird.
That's no moon.
Nice. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about this, and I will relay this to you guys too. If you're interested in an interesting narrative with good puzzling, this is one to play. Don't look further into it than that, because apparently the narrative is something really special and spectacular, and everybody's like, don't spoil it. So
that sounds like that card game. What was that card game? That had you did an episode on it where it's kind of it's a deck builder, but it's also like got the creepy element.
Oh, Inscription.
Yes, it sounds like kind of Inscription, where like you look at the game from the top and you're like, that's just in this case, with yours, it's just a space exploration, it's just a card game with Inscription, but there's a narrative and a story behind it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, it's really interesting. I've dug into some of the narrative and story so far, and it's really cool how it just unfolds and gives you an idea of what's been going on. And
nice.
It's pretty cool. It is not voice acted. It is all reading. So something to consider.
Yeah, I don't like reading anymore.
But to be fair, most of what you're reading is because you're translating old text.
Oh, very cool. So. Well, I mean, a lot of when like Subnautica, a lot of it was reading as well, and well worth reading. So
yeah, in terms of like it does give a little Subnautica vibes in terms of just like how the world just sort of builds around you as you're exploring.
Nice.
But you're not trapped in one spot. You can literally just go wherever and check it out.
Very cool.
So I actually went out past the edge of the solar system, and my my ship was like, we need to autopilot you back towards the star. You've gone too far.
So kind of like Subnautica, where it just throws Leviathan after Leviathan at you if you go beyond the edge.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing combat-wise in this game.
Okay.
There are hazards, there's fall damage, but nothing combat.
That's cool. I'll have to check this one out.
I will say this because I thought it was hilarious. I did accidentally die before I got to the first save point the first time. Because I jumped on a geyser and it sent me way up into the sky, and I just fell to my death.
Nice.
Couldn't even be mad. It was just funny.
That's great. Did you ragdoll? I hope you ragdolled.
No, they don't show you that because it's all first person.
Oh, okay.
It just, you see like the pain thing happen to the screen, and then it goes black, and it's like, game, or you died, or you are dead, or something like that. And it's like, well, take me back to the title screen.
Very nice.
Didn't even get to the save point.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check this one out for sure.
Yeah, this was one I had been considering playing on stream, but or at least recording and putting up on the YouTube. But I was like, I think I'd just rather enjoy this one. So
Yeah, for sure.
so far, after about 3 hours, I recommend.
Okay, nice.
And all right, with that, thank you guys for listening. This is Press B to Cancel. You can check us out at our website, pressbtocancel.com. Come join the Discord. We always love chatting with people there. It's when it gets lively, it gets lively. Like sometimes I can't keep up with the chat, which is awesome.
Yes.
Some days I wake up and there's been like 2 conversations have happened.
Right.
And I'm like reading for a half hour.
Well, and as I said, come fight me on Truck Simulator being an
RPGs.
RPG. Yeah, let's go.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. This has been a good one. Thank you.
All right.
Good idea.
Zool.
There we go.